Greetings, my dear wizards, witches, muggles, and squibs. Today, we shall delve into the history of one of the most renowned and legendary families of the wizarding world. A lineage that, straddling myth and reality, has left an indelible mark across the centuries. And no, I'm not speaking of the Malfoys and their collection of platinum blonde Viking wigs. I speak, of course, of the Potters, a tale that began with Linfred of Stinchcombe, an eccentric and beloved healer of the 12th century, nicknamed the Potterer, a moniker that would eventually become the surname we all know.
Potter.
But the Potters did not remain confined to the British Isles. In the 18th century, Abraham Potter entered legend as one of the first 12 Aurors. The American dream. Across the centuries, the Potters have shaped the history of the wizarding world, from Ignotus Peverell to a certain boy, someone through whom darkness was finally defeated. And it is thanks to him that we are here sharing stories and a smile or two. Am I right? I speak, of course, of the one who became known as the boy who lived, Mr. Harry Potter.
In the soft green folds of 12th century Gloucestershire, where the hedgerows run wild and ancient paths wind between oak and mist, stood the modest cottage of Linfred of Stinchcombe. To most, he was a genial, scatterbrained wizard with earth beneath his nails and pockets full of oddly shaped roots. His Muggle neighbors adored him, calling him the Potterer for the way he wandered his garden, murmuring fondly to his herbs and wildflowers. Over the years, the name softened into a surname that would one day be known throughout the wizarding world, Potter. But in the medieval era, Linfred's renown was of a very different sort. They admired his charm, yes, yet dismissed him as a dabbler, a man whose experiments lacked the rigor and formality expected of a true potioneer. None echoed that judgment more sharply than Edric Thornwood, a stern, traditionally minded wizard whose daughter, Avelina, had quietly stolen Linfred's heart.
Not bad, eh?
Edric saw potential in Linfred, but that potential was wasted. Too unorthodox, too whimsical, too much time spent in gardens, chatting with plants and flowers, and not enough in proper laboratories. For a young wizard already prone to absent-mindedness, that criticism bit deep. And though Linfred laughed it off to friends and neighbors, behind closed doors it stirred something restless in him, a desire to prove that his wandering mind and wild methods could produce wonders nonetheless.
Just wait and see.
The obstacle was clear. Edric would not consent to Linfred marrying his daughter until he had demonstrated true skill, discipline, and mastery over his craft. Or so he believed. What followed were months of obsessive experimentation. Nights lit only by candle flame, the cottage trembling with the bubbling of cauldrons. Linfred sought not fame nor fortune, but validation. A remedy so effective, so elegantly crafted, that even Edric Thornwood would be forced to acknowledge his brilliance.
Just a bit more.
Then came a winter marked by lingering illness among wizarding households. Yet among them, one fell far more gravely than the others. The gentle Avelina.
My child.
No ancient druidic wisdom had worked, nor any of the newer remedies from Diagon Alley. Her condition worsened day by day, until, in the dead of night, a desperate knocking came at the Thornwood door. Linfred created a warming tonic, the earliest ancestor of the pepper of potion, that could banish a fever in minutes.
I'll save her.
Slowly, the fever broke, color returned to Avelina's cheeks, and the grip of illness released its hold. Edric, who had watched the ordeal in silent scrutiny, finally lowered his gaze. His eyes were glistening. It was enough. Weeks later, the two lovers were married beneath the canopy of spring blossoms where they had first met, the forest whispering with the promise of new beginnings. Legend has it that a stag appeared to honor them in the moment of their pledge of eternal love.
Forever.
From that point on, Linfred worked with renewed purpose, refining remedies that would one day evolve into potions still taught at Hogwarts today. Scala Grow, Pepper Up, and more. The modest sales of these cures earned him a considerable fortune, one he left to each of his 7 children upon his death. According to many historians of magic, the life of Linfred of Stinchcombe echoed in the pages of one of the most beloved wizarding tales, The Wizard and the Hopping Pot, a story later collected by Beadle the Bard. In its earliest telling, the tale celebrated the kindness and ingenuity of a wizard whose potions healed both witches and muggles alike, a reflection, perhaps, of Linfred's own deeds. It was the early years of the 13th century. Sent by his father to the village of Godric's Hollow, where some of the most renowned apothecaries and potion masters were said to reside, Hardwin Potter was to broaden his knowledge, refine his craft, and learn the subtleties of magical commerce. Unlike Linfred, whose eccentric brilliance often drew attention and suspicion, Hardwin moved with a quiet diligence, observing and learning from the world around him, yet never losing the spark of curiosity that marked him as his father's son. It was in these same streets that he first encountered Iolanthe Peverell, a young woman of striking presence, whose very name whispered of legacy and ancient magic. Beautiful, poised, and intelligent, Iolanthe's gaze seemed to measure the world in ways few could comprehend. And Hardwin, for the first time, felt the stirrings of something far greater than mere admiration.
Impressive.
Their meeting was unassuming, ordinary, yet fated.
My pleasure.
In garden paths edged with ivy, they spoke of books, of magic, and of the subtle art of understanding the unseen. Yet the young potter sensed that Iolanthe carried something beyond her graceful composure, a secret that she could not reveal. There was a guarded weight behind her gaze, subtle yet unmistakable, and he found himself drawn not merely to her presence, but to the mystery it concealed. Determined to understand, Hardwin began to ask discreet questions of Godric's Hollow's inhabitants,
Tell me,
weaving conversations that would seem casual,
has it always
but
been
were, in truth,
quiet around
careful inquiries into the Peverell family.
Peverells?
He already knew that they were a noble, storied lineage, famed for skill in the magical arts. Yet whispers of old curses and dark pacts clung to their name. Some spoke of a covenant struck by Iolanthe's grandfather and his 2 brothers, 3 wizards of exceptional talent, with death itself, a tale, Hardwin thought, more born of superstition and jealousy toward the prestige of the Peverell name than of reality.
Could it be?
But his beliefs were overturned a few seasons later, when, by then, the matter had lost all importance to him. After months of increasingly joyful moments spent together, Hardwin finally declared his love to Iolanthe, who, without hesitation, returned it.
I will.
And so came the day of their wedding. A day of celebration, songs, butterbeer, and, finally, the moment arrived. As night fell, in the quiet confusion of newlywed joy,
Hardwin.
the young Peverell showed him something.
It's a matter of utmost importance.
She said, a secret,
secret.
that he must now swear
swear
to become the guardian
To
of.
guard.
Iolanthe opened a chest and drew forth a cloak.
Not just any cloak.
She said,
A deathly hallow.
the cloak of invisibility,
My grandfather.
a relic inherited from her grandfather Ignotus Peverell, one of the fabled 3 brothers who had once cheated death. She told him of its secret passage through the generations. It had passed from her grandfather to her father, and then, due to the lack of male heirs, to her.
To me.
And as the girl recounted the story of Ignotus, humble, wise, and cautious, Hardwin listened in awe. He heard of a man who had lived long, joyful decades, seeing through death's deception and safeguarding the cloak so that his descendants might live freely, unburdened by the lure of unchecked ambition, unlike what his 2 brothers had done. And so it was that the cloak of invisibility passed from the Peverell family into the hands of the Potters, where it would remain hidden and secret through the centuries until the present day.
Merry Christmas, my dear wizards, witches, muggles, and squibs. Here we are again, drawing ever closer to that time of year when magic feels strongest, when we are reminded of the value of the most important things, those we have around us every day, but often fail to truly appreciate. It's time to pause, breathe, and smile, and to share something special with those around us. And why not, with a hearty roast and potatoes, a slice of pumpkin pie, and at least a couple of butterbeers. And I want to do it with you, as a small token of gratitude for all your support, and to make this festive season even more magical. Until the 31st of December, all products in the shop will be 20% off. Whether it's a small collectible artifact, a magical tome, a painting to adorn your dwelling, or an item of clothing to be at least as half charming as Quentin Pentagran. Well, it's the perfect time to gift yourself a piece of magic. You'll find all the details and links in the description and pinned comment below. May you enjoy peaceful days, surrounded by those you love, but always with a little mystery and magic, just as we insatiable adventurers like it. Once again, Merry Christmas, Spellbook family, and a Happy New Year from myself and the entire team.
Over the generations, the Potters quietly wove themselves into the fabric of wizarding England. From the cobbled streets of Godric's Hollow to the hidden glades of Gloucestershire, generations of the family honed their craft, balanced secrecy with service, and nurtured the legacies of both Linfred and Hardwin. Tales of their skill as potion makers and healers spread discreetly among magical circles, while whispers of their lineage, tied to the fabled Peverells and the deathly Hallows, were from time to time quietly hushed. Through the 14th and 15th centuries, the Potters faced the usual trials of any ancient wizarding family: the ebb and flow of political influence, the occasional quarrel with rival families, and the constant dance of remaining unseen by Muggles while maintaining their magical traditions. Yet they endured, cultivating both a reputation for integrity and a penchant for innovation, the family name steadily growing in respect, if not in ostentation. By the early 17th century, Ralston Potter emerged as a figure of note, a steady presence within the chambers of the Wiesengamot, at a time when many noble pure-blood families, such as the Gaunts and the Blacks, clamored for open war against Muggles. Ralston moved with measured purpose, favoring diplomacy and caution. He championed the International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy, helping to solidify a historic decision to separate definitively the magical and Muggle worlds, concealing wizarding society entirely from the eyes of non-magical folk. Over the centuries, Muggles would forget magic altogether, transforming it into legends, superstitions, and folk traditions. Through his steady hand, the Potters maintained both their honor and their prudence, securing their role as a family quietly at the heart of wizarding society. It was from this lineage of careful stewardship that a branch of the family would one day turn its gaze beyond Europe, crossing the Atlantic to the untamed colonies of the New World. Among them was Abraham Potter, a boy born in forests and frontier towns, still unaware that one day he would become forever part of American wizarding legend. His father, Matthias Potter, had once served as an Auror in England, trained by Hephaestus Gore himself, the founder of the first Auror division. When Matthias moved to the colonies, he brought with him the same relentless standards and secret knowledge. From the earliest age, Abraham was put through rigorous training, dueling, defensive magic, the study of dark arts, all designed to shape not only his skill, but his character. By the time he came of age, Abraham had grown into a wizard of precise talent and unshakable resolve. The combination of his family's legacy, the harsh lessons of frontier life, and the shadowed work of his father had forged him into someone ready to face the dangers of a land where chaos ruled and law was scarce. And he knew it would be his duty to do something to make those lands a better place. Long before the United States had a name on the map, The North American colonies were a wild, lawless place. Not just for Muggles, but for witches and wizards too. The land was crawling with scourers, merciless bounty hunters who twisted the law for a handful of galleons. They sold out their own kind, trading witches and wizards to nomad towns in exchange for gold, or worse, using them like cattle to line their pockets. With no ministry, no law, and no order to speak of, criminals from all corners of the wizarding world came flooding into the New World, drawn by the chaos and the chance to make a name for themselves. Then, in 1693, in the wake of the burning embers left by the Salem witch trials, something changed. From the ashes rose the magical Congress of the United States of America, MACUSA, a ragged promise to protect the magical community and keep the statute of secrecy intact. And leading the charge was Josiah Jackson, the first president of MACUSA, a man who understood that a law without the power to enforce it meant nothing at all. His first act? He formed a ragtag squad, a dozen souls who would become the first American Aurors. And who better than one whose every day had been devoted to such a duty? Abraham Potter was the first to answer the call. But he was not the only one. Alongside him, witches and wizards stepped forward. They weren't polished ministry recruits, not by a long shot. They were survivors, outlaws in their own right, carving their way through a brutal land, ready to put themselves between the innocent and the growing darkness. Their names would be etched into magical history, not for the titles they wore, but for the price they paid. Of those 12, only 2, Charity Wilkinson and Theodard Fontaine, lived long enough to see their last days. But all 12 became legends in their own right. And even today, we are here to tell not only the legend of the 12 American Aurors, but alongside it, that of Abraham Potter, the one who had devoted and sacrificed his life to making the American wizarding world a place truly worthy of being called home.
Oh, my valiant adventurers, I bring you news that shines brighter than any Loomis. 3 enchanted tiers: Curious Wanderer, Enchanted Explorer, and Master Adventurer. The room of requirement? Nothing but a broom cupboard in comparison. With us, you'll gain early access to every episode, a secret Discord server to keep you ahead of everyone else, and that's not all. Priority replies to your comments, a direct channel to help you choose new content together, and even exclusive wallpapers taken from each episode. And it doesn't stop there. For the bravest among you, extra videos with my director's notes and reflections on the episodes already released. Because, let's be honest, you can never get enough of your dashing wizard adventurer, Quentin Pettigrew. Click join below for all the details. Joining the Spellbook family is a small gesture that supports our journey and allows us to bring content truly worthy of our audience. So thank you sincerely from the bottom of our hearts for being here. And you Muggles listening in, I beg you tell me, what on Merlin's beard is a Discord server supposed to be?
Centuries passed, and the Potters continued their quiet stewardship of wizarding England. Through the 17th and 18th centuries, the Potters witnessed the rise and fall of kingdoms, the turbulence of magical politics, and the ever-present need to safeguard their secrets. Some descendants pursued scholarship, others mastered dueling or potion-making, while a few became mediators and arbiters among wizarding families. By the dawn of the 20th century, the world that the Potters knew had shifted in ways both subtle and profound. Among this new generation, Henry Potter, known simply as Harry to his friends, emerged as a figure defined not only by his lineage, but by the strength of his convictions. After graduating from Hogwarts, he walked the hallowed halls of the Wizengamot from 1913 to 1921 with a sense of purpose, never shying from the clash of ideals. It was in these years, amid the turbulence of war and political debate, that his voice would first make a mark. But when Minister for Magic Archer Evermond forbade the magical community from aiding Muggles during the devastation of the First World War, Henry spoke out. Yet courage, especially the principled kind, seldom comes without a price. At the dawn of the 20th century, Bloodlines still dictated the invisible hierarchies of the wizarding world, and the Sacred 28 held in their hands not only influence, but the very levers of Britain's magical economy and politics. In such a climate, Henry's outspoken defense of Muggles marked him, and by extension his entire family, as dangerously out of step with the pure blood establishment. In the years that followed, the consequences became official. When the Pure Blood Directory was published in 1931, the Potter name, once counted among the most respected pure-blood families of Britain, was conspicuously absent from the final roll of the Sacred 28. Whispers suggested that the decisive blow had been something almost trivial, that their surname was far too common among ordinary Muggles. But those who knew the truth understood that the exclusion was punishment, retribution for Henry Potter's refusal to turn his back on the non-magical world during its darkest hour.
What is to come?
The Potters endured, turning inward when society shifted its gaze elsewhere. It was in this quieter chapter of their history that the next generation was born. Flemmont Potter entered the world beneath the long shadow of a family both respected and quietly controversial. His father, Henry, had already carved his place in history through conviction and dissent. Flemmont inherited from him not only the Potter name, but the consequences of it. Even his own first name, taken from his grandmother's maiden name, a last wish spoken on her deathbed, seemed to mark him from the start. At Hogwarts, the name earned him more mockery than admiration. Flemmont was a Gryffindor with an unfortunate moniker, and many classmates made sport of it. He, however, was not one to take a slight lightly. More than once he answered jabs with a duel behind greenhouses or in abandoned corridors, bouts that, over the years, shaped him into a remarkably skilled duelist. He would later joke that every insult had been worth at least one polished spell. From Henry, he also inherited something far rarer than pride or stubbornness: the cloak of invisibility. Flemmont treasured it, though he used it sparingly, a tool for private wanderings, or moments when the world felt a touch too loud. Adulthood brought with it a different kind of challenge. Flemmont possessed a mind both restless and inventive. And it was this, rather than any inherited wealth, that changed the course of his life. After Hogwarts, he devoted himself to perfecting a potion he had tinkered with since his teenage years. The result, Sleeky's hair potion, became an unexpected phenomenon. Its success swept across Britain and, to his mild embarrassment, across the Atlantic as well, earning him fortune far beyond what even the old Potter vaults had contained. By the time he retired and sold the company, the family's gold had multiplied many times over. Yet for all their comfort, Flemmont and his wife, Euphemia, bore one quiet sorrow. Years passed without a child. They made peace with it, or tried to. And then, late in their lives, when hope had grown thin and carefully folded away, Euphemia discovered she was expecting. Their son, James, arrived in 1960, a miracle born into a home that had long prepared itself for silence. And because he came so late, and because he was the only one they would ever have, James Potter grew up adored in a way that was unmistakable. The beloved heir of a family marked by courage, conviction, and the peculiar magic of second chances. And it is with little James Potter that the story of this family grows livelier, more adventurous, and perhaps even more tragic. It all began on September 1st, 1971. As tradition held, it was the first day at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry for many young witches and wizards, eager to embark on their own journeys into the wizarding world. Aboard the Hogwarts Express, surrounded by the lush green of the Scottish Highlands, the destinies of two boys became forever intertwined.
My name's James.
James Potter and Sirius Black
Potter.
shook hands, unaware that this simple gesture would be just the beginning of a friendship that would shape the course of events and future generations in the wizarding world. Pure blood heirs of their respective families, the friendship between the two boys, so similar yet so different, was cemented the moment the Sorting Hat placed them both in Gryffindor. James had hoped for it so dearly, yet at the same time he knew well that, just like his father Fleamont and his grandfather Henry before him, it was in the house of Godric the Brave that he would find his place. Deep down, he knew that within the corridors of that castle he had imagined for so long, an infinity of stories and adventures awaited him, ready to be lived and one day retold. Indeed, it was on his 11th birthday, in anticipation of his admission to Hogwarts, that Fleamont revealed to James the truth about the precious heirloom that had been passed down from one generation of Potters to the next for centuries. The invisibility cloak. James already had at least a dozen ideas about how to use it at Hogwarts. Would his father be angry if he shared the truth about their family heirloom with young Sirius Black? Probably. But then again, the cloak was his now. Sirius, on the other hand, was the eldest son of the noble House of Black, a once notable pure-blood wizarding family. The third of his name, born to Orion and Walburga Black, both dark wizards and second cousins, Sirius also had a younger brother, Regulus, with whom he never had a close relationship. Sirius felt different, an outsider. In fact, he considered Regulus to be a better son than himself. The Black family held a strong belief in pure-blood elitism. They refused to associate with Muggles, Muggle-borns, Squibs, and blood traitors, even disowning Squib family members like Sirius's great-uncle, Marius Black, and insisted that their family only marry within respectable pure-blood circles. Because of these beliefs, they were often forced to marry their own cousins. They also held the dark arts in high regard. In contrast, from a young age, Sirius had a fascination with the Muggle world, shown by his interest in motorcycles. With a strict Slytherin family tradition, his sorting into Gryffindor became a pivotal step in the decline of his relationship with his family. Despite the hatred directed towards him, particularly from his mother and his cousin Bellatrix, Sirius greatly enjoyed life at Hogwarts with his friend James. The two had become practically inseparable, facing adventures together and getting into one scrape after another. During their first year, James formed a friendship with two fellow Gryffindors, the lonely and quiet Remus John Lupin and the clumsy, chubby Peter Pettigrew. Peter, who had put the Sorting Hat in a dilemma during the ceremony, taking over 5 minutes to decide whether to place him in Slytherin or Gryffindor and making him a hat store, was the typical anonymous kid teased for his clumsiness. He looked up to James and Sirius as his idols, skilled in magic, courageous, and admired by all their classmates. Peter, frequently targeted by older students and Slytherins, was often bullied and mocked, much like young Remus, who hid a tragic past behind his reserved nature. His father, Lyle Lupin, a world-renowned expert on non-human spiritus apparitions, such as poltergeists and boggarts, had been contacted by the Ministry of Magic as the Dark Lord rose to power and the First Wizarding War loomed. Alongside other experts on dark creatures, he was sought out in hopes of better understanding the threat and keeping it in check. Lyle gladly accepted an invitation to join the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. In early 1965, Fenrir Greyback was questioned by the Ministry of Magic regarding the deaths of 2 Muggle children. Although he was caught with a pack of werewolves, the Ministry failed to realize that Greyback was one himself due to the poor upkeep of the werewolf registry. Greyback posed as a harmless Muggle tramp, which convinced most of the committee, except for Lyle Lupin, who noticed telltale signs of lycanthropy and recommended keeping Greyback in custody until the full moon, just a day away. However, Lyle's remarks about werewolves being soulless and evil led to his expulsion from the meeting, and Greyback was released, later escaping with the help of accomplices. Greyback soon planned his revenge, and thus began the tragedy. Shortly before Remus Lupin's 5th birthday, the werewolf broke into his bedroom and attacked the defenseless boy, marking him with a curse that would accompany him for the rest of his life: lycanthropy. Little Remus had become a werewolf himself. His parents took him to various healers and did everything they could to make him a normal boy again. But there was no cure for his condition. Yet, despite the difficult situation and the prejudice of the wizarding world against Remus, Headmaster Albus Dumbledore, as was his custom, acted against the tide by making special accommodations to allow Remus to attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. After the first difficult year at school, during which he kept his status as a werewolf a secret from all the students, inventing stories to explain his monthly disappearances, things changed when some friendly boys from his dormitory, James along with Sirius and the goofy Peter Pettigrew, managed to sense his secret, discovering his true nature. Remus, terrified and certain that his life at Hogwarts would become even more challenging now that his secret was out in the open, was instead taken aback by the playful demeanor of his friends. They started joking around with him on a waxing moon night, trying to help him approach his lycanthropy in a light-hearted and playful way. They began calling him Moony, and from that point on, even the dreaded full moon nights became, for the first time, not so terrible thanks to the company of friends. Friends who would forever protect his secret. Thus, amid jokes and laughter, on that night in late October, the quartet of the Marauders was born. The four friends gradually became inseparable, gaining increasing notoriety within the halls of Hogwarts. Remus began to earn respect. Peter stopped being bullied and even started teasing the more arrogant students himself. As for James, along with Sirius, who were already popular and by their second year had become respectively chaser and beater for the Gryffindor Quidditch team, they became even more so, making them the most sought-after boys by the girls at school. Despite their popularity, there was one girl in particular, a fellow Gryffindor in the same year as the Marauders, who seemed to harbor no particular fondness for the quartet. Quite the opposite. A Muggle-born girl with flowing red hair and sparkling green eyes, Lily Evans. Lily's best friend, Severus Snape, a half-blood who had been sorted into Slytherin, was often targeted by the group, especially by James Potter, who was always looking for an opportunity to mock him, derogatorily nicknaming him Snivelous Snape. Not that James's intentions were ever malicious, but in those years the young Potter was still immature, so sure of himself, and yet, deep down, not certain at all. He never failed to seek out occasions to test himself, always demanding more from both himself and his friends, whom he dragged each day into new exploits and improbable adventures. Severus Snape once remarked that James was so arrogant that criticism simply bounced off him. This rebellious attitude was notably shaped by the negative qualities he developed, such as the habit of ruffling his already messy hair to make it look even more disheveled, as if he had just jumped off his broomstick. He enjoyed hexing Slytherin students, especially Severus Snape, merely for the sake of doing so. But if Snape was targeted, it was also because James aimed to get noticed by Lily Evans, that intelligent and beautiful Gryffindor girl, the only one with enough guts to stand up to him and tell him off. Lily didn't like James at all. To her, he was nothing more than a self-centered show-off. His behavior towards her friend Severus was intolerable in her eyes. James and Snape had a strong rivalry throughout their time at Hogwarts. Some believe this began due to Snape's jealousy of James's talent in Quidditch and his popularity, as well as Snape's interest in the dark arts, which James despised. However, it is also known that James and Sirius had gotten off on the wrong foot with Snape from the beginning. When they first met Snape during their first year on the Hogwarts Express, they insulted him for his desire to become a Slytherin and mocked him for his nose, setting a solid foundation for rivalry. Their subsequent interactions only served to intensify this conflict. Snape followed the Marauders around, looking for reasons to get them expelled. James, in turn, used the hexes that Snape himself had created against him. Days passed at Hogwarts, and with time and the physical changes typical of adolescence, lycanthropy became increasingly difficult for Remus to manage and endure. To ensure his safety and that of his peers, the boy was taken to a shack each month during his transformations to prevent him from attacking other students. However, this isolation led him to lash out in frustration, causing villagers in Hogsmeade to mistake his screams for those of violent ghosts. To keep the truth about the noises a secret, Dumbledore encouraged these rumors, resulting in the Shrieking Shack gaining a reputation as the most haunted building in Britain. During those years, the Wolfbane potion had not yet been invented, and the psychological pressure Remus faced in trying to combat his curse was making him more and more sullen, gaunt, and silent. It was then that the young Sirius had an insight, an idea as crazy as it was unfeasible. What if on full moon nights, he, James, and Peter could become animals as well? Perhaps Remus would feel less alone. Perhaps that anger and ferocity that overtook him on those nights would be subdued. But how could all this become a reality? Naturally, the three Marauders would need to become animagi. Becoming an animagus is considered one of the most difficult magical skills to master. James smiled. A new venture, a new mission. Reckless, unlikely to succeed. He couldn't have asked for anything better. To become an animagus, a witch or wizard must undergo a long and challenging ritual. The process begins with the individual keeping a single mandrake leaf in their mouth for an entire month, from one full moon to the next. If the leaf is removed or swallowed, the process must start over. On the next visible full moon, the wizard must spit the saliva-covered leaf into a small crystal vial that captures the moon's rays. They then add one of their own hairs, a silver teaspoon of dew, collected from a place untouched by sunlight or human feet for a week, and the chrysalis of a death's head hawk moth. This mixture must be placed in a quiet, dark location without disturbance. The wizard must wait for a lightning storm, chanting the incantation Amato Animo Animato Animagus every sunrise and sunset. If done correctly, they may sense a second heartbeat while touching the wand to their chest, which is normal and should not interrupt the process. When the lightning storm occurs, the wizard retrieves the vial, which should contain a blood-red potion if the previous steps were followed correctly. They must then move to a secure location to safely transform and, using their wand, recite the incantation one last time before drinking the potion. Once completed, the witch or wizard gains the ability to shift between their human and animal forms at will, with or without a wand. However, any mistakes in the process could lead to disastrous results, such as permanent half-human, half-animal mutations. After successfully completing the ritual, the animagus experiences a vision, revealing their new animal form. For 3 years, the Marauders secretly studied and followed the rules of the ritual, trying to achieve their animal forms. And so it happened, during their 5th year at Hogwarts, that the first among them succeeded. Sirius transformed into a powerful dog, black as night. Following him was James, who was able to become a stag with impressive antlers, both animals large enough to keep the wolfish Remus in check. Meanwhile, Peter managed to become a rat. Once a month during the full moon, Sirius, James, and Peter would sneak out of the castle under James's invisibility cloak, transform, enter the Whomping Willow, walk down the tunnel, and meet Remus in the Shrieking Shack. Under their influence, his lycanthropy became more manageable. While his body remained that of a wolf, his mind became less wild in their presence. The 4 of them soon left the confines of the Whomping Willow and roamed the school grounds and Hogsmeade by night. Having become animagi and never officially registered as such with the Ministry of Magic, the Marauders coined nicknames to accompany Moony. Sirius became Padfoot, Peter became Wormtail, and James became Prongs. But throughout all those years at Hogwarts, the Marauders did not hold back, quite the opposite. In fact, during their 5th year, they perhaps tested their greatest invention, a magical artifact of incredible power and wisdom, infused with the personalities of its 4 creators, the Marauders' Map. They created the map using the Homunculus Charm, a powerful and advanced spell that enchanted it to track the movements of everyone in the castle.
Pad, right corner. Yes, mate.
The ability of Sirius, Peter, and James to become animagi allowed them to explore the castle grounds undetected at night. Meanwhile, the interior of the castle was mapped over time with the help of James's invisibility cloak. This map proved quite useful to the foursome over the years, until it was confiscated by Argus Filch. Although the precise circumstances surrounding the Maker's loss of their artifact are mostly unknown, it is easy to conclude that they eventually overreached and were cornered by Filch, likely due to a tip-off from Snape, who had become obsessed with exposing his arch-rival, James Potter, for wrongdoing. The animosity between the Marauders and Severus Snape, especially James, worsened day by day. Supporting the quartet was Patricia Rakepick, a Gryffindor a few years older, with whom they had formed a close friendship. In addition to their shared hatred for Snape, Patricia also had the same adventurous spirit and tendency to break the rules. Because of this, she was detested by most of the professors, who considered her a bad influence on younger students, except for Albus Dumbledore, who regarded her as an exceptionally talented pupil. In many ways, she could be seen as the true mentor of the Marauders, imparting to them cunning and the art of devising sophisticated pranks and tricks. At that time, Patricia was likely the only other person to whom the Marauders had confided the existence of the map. One afternoon in the spring of their 5th year, James and Snape had yet another heated exchange. But this time, James crossed the line, bullying the Slytherin by using a spell he had invented that turned him upside down to reveal his underwear, humiliating him in front of many students, including Lily. She demanded that James stop, but he responded, "I will, if you'll go out with me, Evans." When James lifted the jinx, Snape, in his humiliation and anger, called Lily a filthy little mudblood, deeply hurting her. Immediately, Potter demanded that he apologize, but Lily retorted that James was as bad as Snape and that she would not date him.
"I wouldn't go out with you if it was a choice between you and the giant squid."
This event deeply shook both Lily and Severus. Although it seemed no less trivial than many other moments in the daily lives of adolescents at Hogwarts, it would leave an indelible mark on their bond, shattering the balance that had existed and setting off a chain of events that would ultimately alter the fate of everyone in the wizarding world. Following this event, Potter and Black were expelled from the Quidditch team. James became quiet, likely beginning to develop a sense of guilt over the cruelty he had shown towards Snape. In contrast, Sirius's animosity toward the Slytherin remained unchanged. On yet another full moon night, Snape grew increasingly curious about where Remus went each month and observed Madame Pomfrey taking him to the Shrieking Shack through a secret passage beneath the Whomping Willow. Sirius took advantage of Snape's curiosity and, as a joke, told him that the trick to getting past the Whomping Willow was to poke the knot at its base. Snape followed Sirius's instructions and was nearly at the Shrieking Shack when James pulled him back. At great personal risk, James saved Severus from certain death at the hands of Remus in his werewolf form. However, Snape stubbornly refused to believe that his old rival had acted out of goodwill, assuming instead that Potter had saved him only to avoid expulsion, and he loathed being indebted to him. Albus Dumbledore swore Severus to secrecy, but he now understood Remus's true nature. The relationship between James and Snape did not improve, but at least it didn't worsen. They simply kept their distance from each other as much as possible. In the meantime, when he turned 16, James's parents allowed Sirius to move in with them so he could escape his own horrible family. Sirius had made a point of hanging Gryffindor banners all over his room at number 12 Grimmauld Place to emphasize his differences from the rest of his family. In addition to the shrine to Godric Gryffindor, he decorated the rest of his room like that of a typical Muggle boy his age. He put up pictures of motorcycles, fighter jets, and posters of models, honoring Muggle achievements in a way that irritated his family. But nothing angered them more than the fact that Sirius found Muggle women attractive. His attitude, completely at odds with the Black family ideals, ultimately led to him being disowned, officially cut off, and replaced in their eyes by his younger brother, Regulus. At Hogwarts, time flew by. The classes became increasingly intense, and even in the rebellious, adventurous spirits of the Marauders, a more mature character began to take root, with their eyes turning toward the future and their destinies once their time at school came to an end. By his 7th year, James had matured considerably, shedding much of the mischievous streak that had once defined him. Despite never having been a prefect, he was appointed head boy alongside Lily, with whom he had the chance to spend more time. The two got to know each other better, and Lily, who had distanced herself from her friend Severus, due to his growing sympathy for the Dark Lord's cause and his Death Eaters, began to develop feelings for James Potter. He stopped hexing others for fun, though he and Snape still occasionally hexed each other in secret, with hints that James was willing to let it go for Lily's sake. Around this time, he finally managed to win Lily over,
Potter,
and they began dating.
you won.
Against all initial odds, the two fell in love. And with the love of James and Lily, the end of their 7th year at Hogwarts also marks the end of the Marauders legend. But the story of the 4 wizards continues, albeit in another chapter, that of the Order of the Phoenix, and the first wizarding war against the Dark Lord. However, that is another story. Once, there was a group of 4 young friends, 4 wizards, bold in spirit, driven by ambition, bound by unshakable loyalty to one another. They shared a fierce desire to leave their mark on the wizarding world.
I solemnly
They
swear
were known as the Marauders.
that I am up to no good.
Their years as students at Hogwarts had come to an end, but the bond they shared remained unbroken. Though hope still shaped their vision of the future, a shadow loomed ever closer, a threat growing with each passing moment. The war, once spoken of in whispers, had finally begun. The first Wizarding War, as the Daily Prophet had dubbed it, and from the very start, it was clear that this would be no fleeting conflict. How could it be that even Albus Dumbledore, by many considered the greatest wizard of all time, the very man who had defeated Gellert Grindelwald and ended the global Wizarding War in 1945, now seemed troubled by the rise of the one whose name most dared not speak, Voldemort?
Dumbledore? Afraid?
James Potter could scarcely believe it.
You're joking.
The young wizard had only recently married the love of his life, the witch Lily Evans, in a quiet ceremony, one kept secret from many due to the ever-present dangers of war. Though the conflict had only just begun, the safety of those who opposed Muggle-born discrimination and the ideology of pure blood supremacy was already in constant jeopardy. And for those who dared to stand openly against it, the risk was even greater, not just for themselves, but above all, for those they held dear. The Death Eaters were on the hunt, ready to spread terror and enforce their ideology with an iron fist, wielding the darkest and most forbidden of magical arts. Not since 1717, when they were outlawed by the Ministry of Magic, had there been such a staggering number of victims claimed by the unforgivable curses. And to such violence, the Ministry responded in kind. Bartemius Crouch, as head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, led the Ministry's campaign against Voldemort's forces, his hatred of the dark arts becoming infamous. Any voices calling for moderation were swiftly silenced as Crouch launched a nationwide crusade against Voldemort and his followers, one marked by a level of brutality, ruthlessness, and mercilessness that had never been seen before, taking even the Death Eaters by surprise. The war had now reached a point of no return.
He was tipped as the next Minister for Magic. He's a great wizard, Barty Crouch, powerfully magical and power-hungry. Oh, never a Voldemort supporter. No, Barty Crouch was always very outspoken against the dark side. But I would say he became as ruthless and cruel as many on the dark side.
James and Lily,
have to fight.
feeling powerless in the face of the ongoing slaughter, knew they had to act.
Justice will be served.
It was a sentiment shared by their dearest friend, Sirius Black, who had stood by James's side as his best man on their wedding day. Sirius, having severed all ties with his own family due to their fanatical pureblood ideology and their unwavering, even financial support of the Dark Lord's war campaign, felt a personal duty to stop his cousin Bellatrix. Rumors spoke of her swift rise through the Death Eater ranks, becoming one of Voldemort's most devoted and lethal followers, leaving a trail of bodies in her wake. But it was different thoughts that weighed heavily on young Remus Lupin. He felt the shadow of his past creeping back, darker and more insidious than ever. The name Fenrir Greyback The werewolf responsible for his curse was once again being whispered in fearful tones after years of silence. Alongside giants and many other werewolves, Greyback had become one of the Dark Lord's most dangerous enforcers. With each passing month, the full moon grew heavier upon Remus. His curse, once a closely guarded secret, had over time become common knowledge. Despite graduating from Hogwarts with top marks, he found himself unable to secure any kind of employment, shunned and rejected at every turn. Because of Voldemort, werewolves had once again become a feared menace, much as they had been in the dark centuries of the Middle Ages. Peter Pettigrew, on the other hand, the least daring and perhaps the least talented wizard of the group, could do little more than echo his friends' frustration, offering his support and proving himself ready to do whatever was needed, should they call upon him. He cared for them deeply. To Peter, they had always been like brothers. At Hogwarts, they had looked out for him, pulling him out of trouble, time and time again. And now, faced with the looming dangers of war, Peter felt vulnerable, lost without his fellow Marauders by his side. And yet, something inside him was beginning to change. He started to feel small, too small. Why did James always have to be the bravest? Why was Sirius always the most skilled duelist? Why was Remus always the cleverest? And why did he always have to be the most insignificant? Peter longed to prove himself, to do more, to be more. Above all, he craved the chance to make a difference, to earn the admiration of his friends at last. It was an autumn day in 1977 when the lives of the four friends, along with Lilies, were forever changed. Albus Dumbledore had summoned them for a message of the utmost secrecy.
There's a group,
he told them. A group formed to combat Voldemort's growing power and the ever-mounting threat he posed. A secret group, never officially sanctioned by the Ministry of Magic. And yet, a group whose mission many believed in. The Order of the Phoenix. So the rumors were true. For years, whispers had circulated about a society of rebellious witches and wizards, those bold enough to risk everything to stand against Voldemort and his Death Eaters on the front lines. And now, at last, the opportunity they had all been waiting for since leaving Hogwarts had arrived. The Order of the Phoenix had been founded by Albus Dumbledore in 1970, back when they were only just beginning their school years, when the First Wizarding War was little more than a prelude to the darkness yet to come. But from the very start, the wizard had known that Lord Voldemort, born Tom Marvolo Riddle, a former Hogwarts student just like them, was a threat that could not be underestimated. Perhaps in time, he would prove even more fearsome than Gellert Grindelwald himself. Over the years, many Aurors loyal to Dumbledore had joined the Order of the Phoenix, taking part in covert, strategic strikes aimed at dismantling the Dark Rebellion. Thanks to their efforts, the group had built an intricate counter-intelligence network, one that proved invaluable in the escalating war. Particularly ingenious was Dumbledore's innovation, modifying one of the most complex spells known to wizardkind, the Patronus, to serve not only as a guardian, but also as a messenger, capable of speaking and carrying vital information between members of the Order.
we know where he is.
And so, James, together with Lily and his friends, became part of history, officially joining the Order of the Phoenix. The superiority of Voldemort's forces had already claimed several victims within the group, such as Fabian and Gideon Prewett. The Bones family was almost entirely wiped out. Benji Fenwick was brutally murdered, and so was Marlene McKinnon, whom Rubeus Hagrid described as one of the most powerful and brilliant young witches of her time. Her entire family was obliterated. Yet despite the heavy losses, the Order of the Phoenix still had formidable members within its ranks. Chief among them was the veteran Auror, Alastor Moody, whose relentless efforts were said to have filled half the cells in Azkaban with Death Eaters he had personally captured. Moody had gained a fearsome reputation, known to have killed several of Voldemort's followers, including Evan Rosier, a duel that left him with significant facial scarring. However, Despite the ministry granting Aurors free rein to use the unforgivable curses, Moody only resorted to lethal force when absolutely necessary. His skill and determination were exemplified when, after 6 months of relentless pursuit, he managed to capture Igor Karkaroff alive, an achievement that coincided with some of the most crucial arrests of the war. The Order received a much-needed reinforcement with the arrival of powerful witches and wizards, not only James and Lily, but also Frank and Alice Longbottom, their former Hogwarts classmates, who had recently married and were exceptionally skilled. Over time, the couple drew the ire of Bellatrix Lestrange, not by provocation, but simply by excelling in their duty. Their skill and determination led to the capture, arrest, and imprisonment of numerous Death Eaters throughout the First Wizarding War, making them a thorn in the Dark Lord's side and a prime target for his most ruthless lieutenant. Frank and Alice, like James and Lily, were among the few who faced Voldemort himself in direct combat, a duel unlike any other. The Dark Lord, intrigued by the sheer skill and bravery James and Lily had displayed, extended them an invitation to join his ranks, eager to claim such talented and fiercely loyal witches and wizards for his cause. To James, Voldemort promised a reign of peace and security, after what he deemed a necessary war to restore order. With Lily, however, he preyed upon her deepest insecurities and fears, the abandonment and rejection by her sister, a Muggle consumed by envy, incapable of understanding or appreciating the gift of magic. Yet neither of the two Gryffindors were swayed by the Dark Lord's seductive words. They escaped his grasp and faced him once more, twice defying him and surviving. The same fate befell Frank and Alice. 3 direct encounters with Voldemort, 3 times they lived to tell the tale. A coincidence that, in time, would not be overlooked by the Dark Lord's superstitious mind. The autumn of 1979 brought with it an unexpected glimmer of joy amidst the ever-present shadow of war.
Big news.
Lily and James were expecting a child, a son they would name Harry. Peter, Remus, and Sirius, who was later chosen as the boy's godfather, could not have been happier. For a brief, precious time, the horrors of battle seemed like nothing more than a distant, fading nightmare. But alas, that fleeting sense of peace was merely an illusion. A decade into Voldemort's rise, a prophecy emerged. A prophecy that would irrevocably shape the fate of the wizarding world. A child born at the end of July to parents who had defied the Dark Lord thrice would possess the power to vanquish him, though neither could live while the other survived. A young seer, Sybil Trelawney, in an unexpected trance, revealed these words, overheard in part by Severus Snape, the old rival of James Potter, who had by then become one of Voldemort's most trusted servants. Yet his love for Lily proved stronger than that for the Dark Lord, and he chose to betray him. He revealed everything to Dumbledore, disclosing the enemy's plans. Voldemort, who until the last moment had wavered between the Longbottoms and the Potters, both having opposed him 3 times, both with a child born in July, had finally chosen the young Harry. James had to be warned. The Potters had to disappear, and quickly. With the help of a carefully devised plan orchestrated alongside Dumbledore, they decided that the safest course of action was to take refuge in Godric's Hollow. The old wizard had spent his childhood there, and still had trusted allies willing to offer their support. Among them, the renowned magical historian, Bathilda Bagshot. Nevertheless, the Order believed that, to ensure the couple's utmost protection, it would be essential to select a secret keeper, a witch or wizard designated to hide a secret by means of the Fidelius charm, embedding it in their very soul. Once a keeper was selected, the person who told them the secret would find themselves unable to pass the information on again, as the secret keeper was the only one capable of revealing it, whether orally or written. The secret keeper could tell as many people as they liked, but they must do so voluntarily. The secret couldn't be blackmailed, bewitched, or tortured out of them.
an immensely complex spell involving the magical concealment of a secret inside a single living soul. The information is hidden inside the chosen person, or secret keeper, and is henceforth impossible to find. Unless, of course, the secret keeper chooses to divulge it. As long as the secret keeper refused to speak, you know who could search the village where Lily and James were staying for years and never find them. Not even if he had his nose pressed against their sitting room window.
James and Lily had no doubts. Sirius was to be their secret keeper. He was, after all, their most trusted friend.
We trust you.
The most loyal, the most capable.
No.
But Sirius disagreed. In a desperate bid to outwit Voldemort, he persuaded them to choose Peter Pettigrew instead. After all, who would ever suspect timid, unremarkable, easily overlooked Peter?
It's the safer way.
In the warmth of that summer, on the 31st of July, 1980, Harry Potter came into the world. For a time, within the quiet sanctuary of their hidden refuge, Lily and James devoted themselves entirely to their son.
What is it?
Shielded from prying eyes and guarded with the utmost care, those first months were filled with love and laughter, a fleeting moment of peace in a world teetering on the edge of darkness. So reads a letter written by Lily to Sirius during those days, later found by Harry many years after.
Dear Padfoot, thank you. Thank you for Harry's birthday present. It was his favourite by far. 1 year old and already zooming along on a toy broomstick. He looked so pleased with himself. I'm enclosing a picture so you can see. You know it only rises about 2 feet off the ground, but he nearly killed the cat and he smashed a horrible vase Petunia sent me for Christmas. No complaints there. Of course, James thought it was funny. Says he's going to be a great Quidditch player. But we've had to pack away all the ornaments and make sure we don't take our eyes off him when he gets going. We had a very quiet birthday tea, just us and old Batilda, who has always been sweet to us, and who dotes on Harry.
We were so sorry you couldn't come, but the orders got to come first, and Harry's not old enough to know it's his birthday anyway.
James is getting a bit frustrated shut up here. He tries not to show it, but I can tell. Also, Dumbledore's still got his invisibility cloak, so no chance of little excursions. If you could visit, it would cheer him up so much. Wormy was here last weekend. I thought he seemed down, but that was probably the news about the McKinnons. I cried all evening when I heard. Batilda drops in most days. She's a fascinating old thing with the most amazing stories about Dumbledore. I'm not sure he'd be pleased if he knew. I don't know how much to believe, actually, because it seems incredible that Dumbledore could ever have been friends with Gellert Grindelwald. I think her mind's going, personally. Lots of love, Lily.
Unfortunately, things didn't go as they had hoped. Just as they believed Voldemort would underestimate Peter, they had done the same. Throughout that final year of the war, Peter had remained in the background, unnoticed. No crucial missions had ever been entrusted to him. He had begun to feel useless, his frustration festering first into self-loathing, then into resentment toward his friends. Amid the chaos of death and brutality that defined the First Wizarding War, Peter's thoughts grew twisted, darker with each passing day, until at last, fear took hold. Perhaps, he thought, if he revealed the secret to the Dark Lord, his own life would be spared. Perhaps Voldemort would even show mercy to James and Lily. After all, it was the child he truly wanted. Maybe, for the first time in his miserable existence, Peter would be rewarded for his actions. Maybe, for once, he would finally be someone.
Tell me.
And so,
Peter
Pettigrew made his choice. He betrayed his friends, revealing their secret to the Dark Lord, and in doing so, he sealed his fate, becoming, at last, a Death Eater. On Halloween night, 31st October 1981, Pettigrew disclosed the Potter's location to his master. Voldemort arrived at Godric's Hollow, and with the Fidelius charm broken, he simply entered their home. Once inside, he murdered James and Lily, who were unarmed. The 2 young members of the Order could do nothing against Voldemort's might this time. However, an inexplicable event occurred that night, perhaps the most mysterious and baffling moment in the entire history of the Wizarding world. when the Dark Lord aimed his wand at the infant, unleashing the deadly green light of Avada Kedavra, the curse that kills without any chance of defense. It rebounded, causing no harm to little Harry. Instead, the curse turned upon its master, disintegrating his body. Among all the theories surrounding this occurrence throughout history, one explanation stands out above the rest: love. Lily's selfless sacrifice for her son created a powerful protective barrier of ancient magic around Harry that shielded him for many years to come. Just as James's values, and those of all the generations of Potters before him, seemed to live on in the little boy. Through the stories others told of his father, through his own imagination, through something in his blood, or perhaps simply because deep inside, he already knew everything he needed to know. And so, we have finally arrived at the story we all know, that of Harry Potter, the boy who lived.
We did it.
It is thanks to his deeds, his Hogwarts adventures, and the friends who helped shape him as both wizard and man, that we can tell this tale today. And so, rather than recount the years of Harry Potter the student, the ones everyone knows, today, I turn instead to those that came after. After the Battle of Hogwarts, a night of fire, ruin, and fierce defiance, the castle stood silent at dawn. Lord Voldemort had been defeated, this time for good, and would never return.
Let's go.
With Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger, his closest friends, at his side, he climbed the familiar staircase to the headmaster's office, where Dumbledore's portrait waited in stillness. There, surrounded by dust from shattered shelves, Dumbledore spoke of what had been done, and of what remained to be done. Harry agreed. The infamous Deathly Hallows were far too powerful to be left for others to find. The Cloak of Invisibility stayed in his keeping, as it always had. Its protection had long been the Potter's responsibility, and so it would remain. He left the Resurrection Stone buried beneath the old trees of the Forbidden Forest, and the Elder Wand, after repairing his own wand, he returned to lie once more in the quiet earth of Dumbledore's grave. In time, with every Horcrux destroyed, even the last faint thread connecting him to Voldemort dissolved. Parseltongue faded from his tongue, like a dream he no longer needed, the final sign that the darkness he once carried had finally left him. The Second Wizarding War had ended, leaving the world both scarred and quiet in its aftermath. The young Harry Potter returned not to celebration, but to a burdened peace, the kind that only those who have faced death and lived can understand. While Hogwarts had been a battlefield in its own right, the wider wizarding world still teetered on the brink of chaos. It was in this fragile dawn that Kingsley Shacklebolt, newly appointed Minister for Magic, sought to rebuild not only the ministry, but the very trust of witches and wizards in their leaders. Harry, who, together with his friend Ron Weasley, had chosen not to return to Hogwarts to complete his 7th year, unlike Hermione Granger, was surprised when he was offered a place in the Auror training program.
Come on, mate.
His experience, after all, likely outweighed any diploma.
Brilliant.
And so he accepted, embarking on the career of an Auror, just as he had long dreamed since his 5th year at Hogwarts. At only 26, he became the youngest head Auror ever appointed. Years of fighting, of witnessing friends and foes fall alike, had tempered him into a wizard both precise in skill and unwavering in resolve. Once within the Auror department, Harry's reputation as a skilled duelist and strategist quickly became evident. Alongside his longtime friend Ron Weasley, he began reshaping the division from within, instilling a discipline and vision that had long been absent. No longer would Aurors merely respond to threats. They would anticipate them, prepare for them, and act with the precision of those who had truly seen the darkness. Under his guidance, the Auror program evolved into something both rigorous and adaptive. Harry's battle experience, his deep knowledge of dark magic, and his unwavering moral compass became the pillars upon which a new generation of Aurors was trained. In the years that followed, Harry remained closely tied to Hogwarts, often returning to lecture on defense against the dark arts, sharing the hard-won lessons of his youth with new generations of students. He ensured that Severus Snape's portrait hung quietly among the others in the headmaster's office, blending into the room as if it had always belonged there. The exploits of the trio were no longer whispered in secret. They had become stories told openly, celebrated on chocolate frog cards, retold with a mixture of awe and fond disbelief.
Come on, Harry.
Harry's life unfolded in private ways he had not anticipated.
Cousin?
He visited his cousin Dudley and his family from time to time,
Hey, Big D.
and maintained a civil, measured relationship with Draco Malfoy.
Potter.
The sharp edges of their schoolboy enmity softened, though never entirely gone. As expected, Harry married Ginny Weasley, a bond forged through years of shared trials and quiet understanding at Hogwarts. After the Second Wizarding War, their romance rekindled with a steady, unspoken intensity, shaped by both the relief of peace and the lingering shadows of the past. Ginny pursued her passion for Quidditch as a chaser for the Holyhead Harpies for several years, but always returned home with a spark in her eyes that made Harry's heart settle a little easier, until eventually she retired to focus on their growing family. The couple soon welcomed 3 children into a world finally at peace. James Sirius, Albus Severus, and Lily Luna. Each carried the Potter legacy in their own way, but at home, in the quiet warmth of hearth and laughter, they were simply Harry and Ginny's children, and their parents' hearts were full in a way that neither the triumphs nor the battles of the past could ever have prepared them for. James, the eldest, was bold and mischievous, much like the 2 troublemakers he was named after. Quick with a teasing remark and ever eager to stir his younger brother, he inherited the Marauders' charm and love of mischief. Confident and independent, life seemed easier for him than for most, and his humor made him well-liked among his peers. As expected, the Sorting Hat placed him in Gryffindor. Albus, by contrast, was quiet, kind, and reflective, bearing a closer resemblance to his father. He carried Harry's irrational fear of being sorted into Slytherin, a fear realized once he arrived at Hogwarts, along with a fascination for his father's past and fame. Albus often struggled under the weight of a family legacy he had never asked for, and he was sometimes bullied for being different. Reserved and careful with his words, he preferred solitude, yet he shared a quietly deep bond with Harry, perhaps the closest of all the siblings.
Walk with me.
Lily, the youngest, mirrored her mother's spirited nature. Jealous of her older brothers, when they left for Hogwarts, she inherited Ginny's playfulness and curiosity. Talkative and bright, she delighted in conversations with her cousin Hugo, imagining which house they might be sorted into. And, like all Potters before her, she found her place in Gryffindor. Even as the children pursued their own adventures and dreams, Harry and his wife's world continued alongside theirs, shaped by both love and responsibility. Ginny later channeled her love of the sport into her work as the senior Quidditch correspondent for the Daily Prophet, bridging her 2 worlds, family and passion, while Harry continued to safeguard the wizarding community, both as a leader and as a father.
Teddy.
And, at the same time,
Come here, boy.
he embraced the role of godfather to Teddy Lupin, the son of the late Remus Lupin and Nymphadora Tonks, offering the boy the care and guidance that his own godfather, Sirius Black, had been unable to provide. Teddy quickly became a fixture in the Potter household, attending dinner multiple times a week and blending seamlessly into the rhythm of the family. Harry continued to guide the Auror department with a careful hand, championing the rights of werewolves and shaping reforms that aimed to blend justice with compassion. Not every initiative, like the effort to make Wolfsbane potion freely available, reached its goal, but the intent mattered, quietly reshaping how witches and wizards thought about fairness and responsibility. Over the years, his influence spread beyond the office. When breaches of the Statute of Secrecy arose, Harry was there, not simply to enforce the law, but to weigh each choice with reason and care.
Always.
Challenges came often, yet the Potter name endured, just as we continue to preserve it today, remembering that across the centuries much changes, yet the deepest values remain. In the wizarding world, as in the Muggle world, we are all beings who walk the same earth and live beneath the same sky. And the Potter family has always remembered that.
And so, my dear wizards, witches, muggles, and squibs, the story of the Potters shows how a name can encompass centuries of magic, legend, and courage. From the Peverell brothers to Harry, each generation has added a chapter to a legacy that continues today. Certainly, having an ancestor who invents miraculous potions and leaves the vaults of Gringotts brimming with galleons wouldn't hurt anyone, would it? But ultimately, it is we who shape our destiny. With our choices and actions, we mold the present and the future, one day at a time. And with that, I bid you farewell, my dear adventurers, but not for long. Soon, a new episode with a new story will arrive, ready to surprise you once more.